what
Exactly.
I do is I position my money in places where I never lose my principal, right?
Right.
That are either tax deferred or tax free.
All right, guys. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. So, my guest today is the money maestro, Chris Miller. And let me give you a little bit of a background and we'll talk about, and so today, let me start with. So, what we're going to talk about today is, so you can get into it, is why do so many people lose their inheritance to lawyers and court fees? Right. So we're going to talk about that, some of the psychological challenges with the money. But let me tell you a little bit about Chris, and I'm gonna cut some of it short so you can talk about herself. But she's a leading expert in safe money strategy. She's helped over 6,000 families and businesses avoid financial disasters by strategically planning for their own futures for over the last 35 years. Okay, so we're about the same length of time in business, and uh she has been featured on hundreds of radio, TV shows, spoken on stage across the country. Her podcast, Money 911, is in the top 1%. And here's a fun fact. She's also a singer-songwriter. That's just fun. I don't know how it has to do with the money, but I think that's great. After that, Nashville is my new favorite sound, right? So a singer-songwriter motivated that you may have heard on the radio. And in a previous life, she walked this barefoot across America. So, okay, I'm going to start with that. Chris, welcome to the Practical Wealth Show.
Great to be here, Curtis. Thank you. All right.
So
Yeah.
tell them what I didn't tell them. Let's
Well,
help these people out.
there's a lot of lifetimes in a lifetime, right?
Yes.
In my youth, I left everything, followed the life of Christ, and walked barefoot across America, literally. No
Wow.
shoes, no script, no purse. Lived in faith, went north in the summer, south in the winter, in faith. And
Okay.
it's amazing. Okay, nomadic. And, after this mountaintop experience, I got blessed with lots of songs that came
Hmm.
channeling through. I'd walk out in the desert and whole songs would manifest. And
Wow.
was blessed to sit around the campfire with the brothers and sisters and sing, praises to God. And we just like really rocked it. And one day the spirit said, go to Hollywood, make a record. Like, what? No. I kind of pushed back on it. Wasn't
Hmm.
a couple of years, but we did knocked on a record label, Seven Sisters, White Robe, Bare Feet. Literally, we were living this way in the 70s.
Wow.
Clothes on our back, a bowl and a spoon, and real faith. Didn't work for money, lived in faith. Got a record deal, and was blessed at a record, one of those old vinyl kind, and
Yeah. I
and
remember that, y'all, for y'all, young
you
people.
remember it too, right?
They barely even know what CDs are anymore. So,
Not even VHSs,
mhm, mm-mm.
right? Or cassettes. So anyway, it was very wonderful, and I got really blessed. And then I got very haughty and full of ego, and next thing I knew, I was doing what everybody does in Hollywood, right? And I ended up losing everything. I
Mm.
lost my friends, my family, and my voice, and my joy. And honestly, I ended up homeless. I couldn't handle all of that, and long story short, I after a lot of trials and tribulations, I, had my Jesus moment again and got back on the train, and I learned became a paralegal. And when I started helping people, well, I was actually working with an attorney on living trust,
Mhm.
91, 90. And we had a widow in there, and all she had was a car and a house, and she needed a trust. And this attorney, he wanted to charge her $5,000, but she didn't have any money. And I looked at him and said, "Hey, can you give her a deal?" And he looked at me like ice, right? And I was out of there because I could not, look at you and then do something else. So that's
Mhm.
what pushed my business. You know what?
Mhm.
I do all the work. I'm going to create this so average people could get living trusts. So 33, 34 years ago, I broke the market. I'm not bragging, but I was one of the first people in Southern
Mhm.
California to do these workshops on what's the difference between a will and a trust. Because at the time, people thought only attorneys can, they're God and they're the only ones that can talk about it. That was the myth that people were taught about,
Okay.
and it's not true. But at the time, there's a lot of things that people think that that aren't, that they don't understand because you go to school, you learn how to make money, get out of school. What do? You go make money and give it to somebody else to what? Gamble,
Yeah.
right?
Gamble. Exactly. That's
You might
exactly what they're doing.
well.
Right. Right. Right.
Is it going to be up or down when you retire? So, as a result of 3 decades, I wrote that in my number one best-selling book, Ready for Pre-Retirement: 3 Secrets for Safe Money and a Fabulous Future. There
Hmm.
are 3 things that people miss.
Okay.
Right?
Let's
Okay,
talk about that. Okay.
perfect,
Go.
perfect. Okay. One, they don't have the right paperwork. So the
Hmm.
living trust, right, Curtis, is not just the end of the life document. It's for now. Hello, we just went through a pandemic. How many people had their powers of attorney for healthcare
Hmm.
or power of attorney for financial
Hmm.
or guardianship for minor children? Like when you're 20 and 30, it's hard to imagine, that you're even going to die and mom and dad go out to dinner and don't come back. Who's going to take care of the kids? I mean,
Right.
do we really think about that at 20 and 30? No,
Yeah.
right?
Oh.
And then when you're 30 and 40, you don't really think about what it's going to be like when it's time 50 and 60, get ready to retire. And then let alone in your, 70s and 80s when you should be looking at some long-term care and catastrophic illness protection because 7
Hmm.
out of 10 of us after
Hmm.
65 end up in a nursing home.
Hmm.
Those are the 3 things that I found after consulting 6,000 people that is missing totally in people's estates. So that's my joy to be able to share that with people because I like to make it easy and like we talked about earlier, right?
Where should they start? So where do you, when you are working with somebody and they let's say on the, like, so it's funny because when you talk about the guardianship, because we both work in the insurance space, the a lot of times I'll help people. They'll say, "Well, I want to. What do you try?" I'll try to find people to send them to because I don't do it. You like, and um, I always thought it should go to attorney. So I would just send them to somebody like that. Although I know they are like $4, 5, $6,000. So people call me and like, I don't know if you know how much these things cost, but you probably do need one, right? Because the because if you got my people don't understand, if you got minor kids, you make them the beneficiary. A lot of insurance agents do this wrong, right? Leaving minor kids as the beneficiary, and that money can be tied up till they reach the age of majority, right? And so they need a trust, and and so talk about that, and then talk about picking the right guardian. Like, what is that's huge. I because you got to tell them,
Gotcha.
and you got to make sure they're responsible.
It is and it's really intricate. So just to start with the first thing you said, that was one thing that really bothered me. Here's this lady with no money in 91, 92.
Hmm.
The attorney was going to charge her 5,000. So I
That's like
broke
25
her.
grand today or something. That's like 20,000 in today's
That's
dollars.
how much I
Yeah.
charge. You
Hmm.
ready?
Yes.
1,200 with for a
Really.
complete living trust with a power of attorney for financial, power of attorney for healthcare, pour over will, living will, and a deed. The whole package for 1,200, and that's everything that they're charging you $5,000, $10,000 in the 90s, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Depending what state, we make them in every state except Louisiana because they're under French law still.
Mm.
Okay,
Mhm. That's
so now,
interesting.
right.
Okay.
So the guardianship is
Vive
really
la France. No, I know
what's
that.
that?
I said vive la France. Love
Yeah,
the French. Right.
right. So anyway, the guardianship is really important because it's like if some mom and dad don't come back for dinner, who's going to take care of
Mhm.
the kids?
Mhm.
You're going to have a first choice and a second choice. A
Okay.
lot of times, obviously, a lot of times there's people in the family that you want to just put in there. May not be your power of attorney, it may be someone completely different, but that is so important.
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
it's the same, just like with a conservatorship. If you become incapacitated, right,
Right.
that you can't handle your own affairs, who's going to take care of business for you? And it is a nightmare, Curtis, because people don't do that. Just like um, having a health care, it just doesn't come to your mind if you never get sick or see a family member go through it. It is a complete nightmare not having it set up ahead of time.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I
And
think that's powerful. I and it needs to be talked about, I had to go to emergency, and which fortunately my wife's an attorney, so we're gonna have this done by the end of the month. But it was, I had to go in. It's like, would you have a healthcare directive? Do you have this and that? And I was like, well, wait, I'm just here for I wasn't, for someone wasn't feeling well. I was
Right.
like, okay, but this is brought up. So if you, not so much to urgent care, but if you go to emergency, that's one of their initial questions. And so, what if you don't come back out? You know, um, are your beneficiary structure right? Do you have this stuff so that you can keep going?
If
And
you
I
don't,
think that's
right.
a major conversation. Yeah.
And if you don't do it, you end up in probate. What's probate? Courts. What do courts take? Attorneys. And what do attorneys take?
Money.
Everybody, right? Everybody knows that answer, right?
Right.
Money, why? Right? What's your shirt say?
Money for life.
Okay. All right. So
Well,
theirs is money for death.
yes.
They wipe you out. They take 25% of the estate.
Mm-hmm.
Only the 1% have known about these things that we talk about till
Mm-hmm.
the last few decades. But the living trusts have been around since the Middle Ages. It's not a
Wow,
new
really?
thing. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not a new thing. But you can see how the media has controlled everything that only certain people know about it and the rest of us don't. And so that was part of why I got broadcasting, was that everybody needs a living trust. And because of all the documents, a good trust that would include a living trust, a power of attorney for financial. If you become incapacitated, you go to that hospital and maybe you didn't come out quite all whole, then you have your family member be able to pay your bills, take care of everything, power of attorney for healthcare. I want my own medical wishes. I don't go along with everything that they want to give me. Okay.
Right.
So
Right.
I want my own wishes, and you give it to the doctor ahead of time. So there's no last minute thing you're running around trying to put all these things together. And Curtis, it gives you peace of mind. I
Mm-hmm.
call it
Yeah.
an estate of mind. When everything is in order, you don't have to think about it. If that 911 happens, everything's in order and you just got it all set up.
It's
I
interesting. I hear famous people that don't have one. The
yes.
what's the Prince,
Michael
James
Jackson,
Brown, Michael Jackson,
same thing.
Chadwick Boseman for the Black Panther. He knew he was sick. I don't understand that
Mhm. All
for a
all
long time.
mhm. I have a whole slide deck of like, a 15, 20, all the names you wouldn't have ever, Matt Lauer, all these different guys that you would never expect because nobody's taught about it. It's
Yeah.
actually hidden. And we're so busy with life, you don't even think about it till somebody dies around you or you get sick. And that's not what you want to do because it's not just the end of the life document. It's something you want to do now. You want to have that health care in place. I mean, who knows when the next lockdown comes or whatever, right? Or something
Hmm.
happens. So that's the foundation. So what do you want to do first? You want to do your living trust. Then
Okay.
you can put all your assets in the name of your trust. Your checkings, your savings, your CDs, your deed will go in the name of the trust. That way all the assets are going to be protected.
Why do you do that? Because I've heard that, but I
Mhm.
never knew why.
The language of the trust, the legal language of the trust is set up to avoid the court system.
Okay.
So if you have a will is a ticket to probate. So that will has to
Never
go
heard
into
that. Okay.
court. You have
Uh-huh.
to hire an attorney, pay a retainer to an attorney, right? $25,000 just for a retainer, not the will, right? Or more, depending on
Hmm.
what coast you're on, right?
Right.
Side of
That's
the
a
road.
California thing, but yeah. This is all for
But
sure.
you guys aren't too far away, right? But the point is, it's a lot. It's expensive. So that anyway, um, and then the living trust will let you avoid the court system, probate, which is public record, and let you give what you have to your family with no middleman.
Hmm.
Period. You don't have anybody that you have to go through to pay money to give your goodies to, and that's
So
what.
what do you do with it while you're living? So you can do business or do transactions
Mhm.
from the account that you set up within the
Right.
trust, or spend things, or you
Buy,
know.
sell, everything's the same because it's still your Social Security number, right? So you buy, sell, and can do everything the same way. Right.
So does the trust give you a certain amount of while you're living asset protection also? Is that
Not
part of the reason?
not a it's not like, having a safe annuity or life insurance where you never lose your principal. It's not
Mhm.
that kind of asset protection. Asset protection from probate courts, attorneys, fees. But if you have, good planners like you or me, then you show them how to protect them from lots of taxes and things like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Asset protection is a whole whole 'nother vehicle depending on, a lot of realtors, different people use different kind of, limited partnerships or
Yep.
different kinds of corporation styles. But the living trust purpose is to avoid probate, conservatorship, guardianship, and let you give what you have to your family. No middleman.
Okay. All right. And so that's, I guess, foundational because now that keeps what I've heard is the trust kind of like a corporation when you're in business. The if you have a sole proprietorship, it's done. Like everything freezes with the trust. Everything is still open. Like you can still the trust can still transact business because it's not you. It's a separate entity that's
Yeah,
still open for business.
yes, that's right. But once the person passes, what happens is the property is transferred to the beneficiaries who
Okay.
hopefully have their own trust.
Mm-hmm.
And because um, usually that's what people do is that when the person passes away, then they're going to transfer everything to the other beneficiaries. If you have it open according to the IRS longer than 9 months, then they make you get a tax ID number for it. And if it's taking you longer than that to sell property, move things around for the beneficiary. But the
Mm-hmm.
purpose is when you pass, it goes to your family.
So talk to me about what are these psychological are as you're working with clients that there people are you see that they're experiencing or emotional relationships with money that that how can they be protected from major setbacks because of how they think?
Oh, that's good. Well, about year 25 of my 3 decades, I I realized I was spending more time coaching people on their mindset than filling out applications, right? Because there's so much
Hmm.
emotion
Hmm.
around money. And I have another company called Legacy Shifters, and my business partner, she was looking at me, and she came from poverty, I came from wealth, and she's like,
Hmm.
"We're," she goes, "There's more of me than there is of you." And we hooked up because we wanted to get this conversation to everybody.
Right.
Everybody needs to prosper. Everybody needs to live like the 1%, but they're not being taught. So I've developed a course called Create Income You'll Never Outlive, where I have like 50 videos and 3 months of training so that people can learn this stuff because all they know about Curtis is you got to risk your money to make money in the stock market, which is
Right.
ridiculous.
Right.
That
Right.
baby's going bye-bye. That's a whole nother story, but they're intentionally gonna crash this thing because 'cause they're wanna introduce CBDC. Now, I know I'm going off into another little zone there, but it's serious. This is a serious, like, wake-up call to people to pay attention. Because if you look at where your money is, it's all in risk,
Right.
right?
All of it. Yeah,
Right.
listen, you talking to the right person, sister. I that's because I was talking to a client this morning. I said, well, I said, have you? What I'll ask you, I'll say, have you? Because I'm big on definitions. They say I want to invest, and I'll say, have you heard of Warren Buffett? And they go, yeah. I said, well, have you heard of Benjamin Graham? I go, no. I said, that's Warren Buffett's mentor, right? And in his book, The Intelligent Investor, I said, this is what he defines as an investment, something you put your capital into where you have safety of principal and you have a reasonable opportunity to make a profit, right? So I said, if you put in 10 grand, how much you supposed to get back? 10 grand, right? I said, and you have a reasonable opportunity to make a profit. So in the book, he says, if it doesn't meet that definition, you are speculating, right? Or another word for speculate, gamble, right? So most people are gambling with most of their money, and that's okay, but they don't know they're gambling, right? They think they're saving, right? And that's
Yeah,
that
exactly. and it is because I've done that for 3, I've watched. It's not that I'm smart, really. It's the pattern. And the
Yeah,
pattern was like the first decade in the 90s was people were living off their interest. They'd have 100,000 in the bank and the interest rate was 12%, and they were just living off their interests.
right.
Then boom, the end of the 90s, 2000 crash. And the next decade people were coming in and their whole lifestyles had changed, and they lost 40, 60% of their pension in their 80s, right? So that doesn't work. And that's why that's why I'm into teaching financial literacy at this point in my life, because
Right.
that pe- I spend more time teaching and doing the mindset, and then it's kind of like how you grew up, like you grow up around people that are in, a poverty mindset, or money doesn't grow on trees, or this negative, or maybe you've had a few bankruptcies and you're broken yourself.
Mhm.
There's a lot of coaching that I do to help people break through that, start fresh.
Right.
This is a new moment, and we just take one thing at a time, and that's what I do, right? Each challenge that comes up, let go, let God, and just take it what's at hand.
'Cause you can always start over. I like talking to people like you because I think that some people, think they're master of a universe because they've never failed, right? And I'd
Right,
rather talk to an entrepreneur that had it, lost it, and was able to pull themselves back out of that hole, because a lot of times people tie their self-worth to their net worth, right? And so they don't, and so it takes a certain amount of fortitude to work yourself back out of that. And I want to bring that part out of your story because that's what it takes. Like, you got to talk to people that have lost it and come back. That's who I want us to talk to. That's what I
exactly.
want to hear about. you know.
Right, right, and a lot, and that's a big majority of people. What is that right now? Curtis, stats are 60% are living paycheck to paycheck right now,
Mhm.
and that includes people that make 100,000
Mhm.
paycheck to paycheck. Not 60% of everyone in the country. That's a sign, right?
Right.
And it isn't getting better. And what you see on the news is a lie. It's all that market is just being controlled and faked out by the fake money they keep printing.
Right.
So it's you've got to take time to learn about these things. I was speaking in Washington D.C. to the U.S. Financial Officers Association. These are the guys that handle the billions and trillions,
Okay.
and the director's sitting there, and I'm giving this conversation, and I go, "How many of you ready for retirement?" And like 2% maybe raised their hand, and I thought I was being cute, and I said to him, "Wow, you're the government. You're supposed to know all this." And he goes, "We're busy taking care of everybody else's money." And I was like, "Oh, that's what everybody does. We're busy living life. We're busy raising kids. We're busy, busy until we retire." And then what I found out was people come to my office to
Mhm.
start the retirement plan at 50, 60, 70, 80. It's sad because they
Yeah.
missed all those years that Warren Buffett talks about of tax deferral and never losing your principal in a market risk. Because the
Mhm.
market, that money will grow 3 times as fast because
Mhm.
you don't have all
Mhm.
that volatility and you're not
Mhm.
paying all those taxes.
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
but the really cool thing what that director said was, everybody should take a retirement planning holiday. What does that mean? Take time off, like on a Sunday or whenever you have time off, and start learning about what we're talking about. Get
Right.
my book or read other books on safe money and what planning. Now, there's an edge. There are risk planners, and then there's people like Curtis and I. We're safe money planners, right? We want to protect principal. So there's different flavors. You got to be
Right.
careful of these guys that, oh, I've got this great stock and it's making 100%, right?
I
You're
I would
damn
run from that, right? Because you got to, I had a one to your earlier point. I had Nelson Nash say to me, and it's in his book, Becoming Your Own Banker. He says, "Listen, if you know what's going on, you know what to do." Right?
mm,
And so you've got to take the time to know what's going on. So when she says fake money, what does that mean? Right?
right.
How does the Fed distort the system? What is real inflation? Like, most people think inflation is higher prices. That's not, that's the effect of inflation, right? But uh because when you see these people that do the stocks and do these Monte Carlo simulations, they just picking a number, but you need $1 million. Yes, but at 30 years from now, how with inflation, how much does that $1 million buy? Right. So you have to look at the purchasing power
Right.
because the value of the dollar is going down. It's not the
Exactly.
price are going up, the dollar doesn't buy as much. So what do you do about that? you know.
That what I do about that, what I've done for 3 decades, so I'm not experimenting because this is
Hmm.
what I've done. I
Yep.
own what I sell, and
Yep.
I won't look at you and say, "You gotta buy this stock," but I don't want it. I can't do that, okay?
Right.
So what I
Exactly.
do is I position my money in places where I never lose my principal, right?
Right.
That are either tax deferred or tax free, and I'm a big fan of creating income for life. And
Mhm.
so when I first started, I learned about the equity index annuity, right?
Mhm.
And I just did not like that experience. I was in Vanguard and all these things and did not like losing money. So I took time off because it was so important for me to have integrity, to
Mhm.
like be able to show you what I would buy or own. And so I took time out to learn about the safe money. Annuities have been around since the Middle Ages. Only the wealthy people have known about it, but they've been around a long time. Now they're hybrid and they have more benefits to them, but they've been around a long time. And what I did was I divided my money in half and I put half in income and half in growth. I had no idea what I was doing. And I put
Mhm.
income at 60, 62, 65. So I had a ladder of income.
Mhm.
When I got to 62, I didn't need the income. I'm still working. God blessed everything and it's going good. So then I pushed it forward. Now pushing it forward, that just means I got more. And
Mhm.
it was really good during the lockdown because I didn't have a lot of business like I normally do because I wasn't out speaking. I'm a
Mhm.
national speaker.
Mhm.
Invite me to your events,
Okay.
right? But during this time, all I did was I had my little stash in my annuity that I could reach in and take 10% out. Then I shifted from brick and mortar to digital during the lockdown time.
Right.
And it
Right.
worked out great because I had planned this decades ago. And honestly, I could stop because I have enough income that I'll never outlive, but my heart is to help millions of people because I see a lot of little sheepies about to go off a cliff and
Right.
nobody's telling them.
Following up the rest of 'em.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love annuities for the right people,
yeah,
and, because I said, "Look," because people are like, "It's just a savings plan with an insurance company," right?
yeah,
And the cool thing about it is think of it as like a private pension, and, the annuity contract, even if you run out of money, they still pay you, right? There's no other financial vehicle that work like that. So you've got to get with a competent person to explain it to you. But I always tell people products are so Chris, what I teach is something called principles-based planning. So we teach principles that help our clients become and remain financially free. Principles drive strategy, right? And strategy drives tactics. So the products are the tactics. And so to me, the product you buy should be a result of your knowledge, not a substitute for it, right? And so that's why it's so important that you lead with education because, see, again, once you know what's going on, you'll know what to do. And does this product help me achieve my goal, right? And then you pick it, right? And so I think if you educate, I always try to help people separate facts from somebody's sales pitch, right? So that and that's the key. Because I tell people, like, I don't want to tell you what to think. I just want you to think,
right.
right?
Yeah,
And I tell people it's your money. I'm the guy. Curtis is just the guy. I say I'm Yoda, right?
right,
And you're Luke and Leia, all right? So you're the hero of this story.
right.
So good stuff. So what am I missing? And what I want you to do is tell them how to follow you
Okay.
and tell them about the course before we go.
So, like you said, mentioned earlier, there's several ways to reach out to me. One, you can just call my office, right? Imagine that.
Mhm.
951-926-4158. You
Mhm.
can get on my calendar with
Mhm.
Meet with chrismiller.com,
Mhm.
KRISmiller.com. Send me an email at Chris, healthymoneyhappylife.com. Check out the website. Listen to my podcast, Money 911. It's also a TV show on the C Suite Network.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah. And my course, you can pre-sign up because we're going to only limit it to like a few, a small group for the
Mhm.
first round at startcreateincome.com. And you can sign up there. And if you have any problems with anything, just write me directly and tell me you want to learn about it because I have spent a decade working on this thing.
Mhm.
I have the guy that did the Academy Awards doing all the slide decks. He would pitch movies to get Steven Spielberg on the stage and pitch
Okay.
the Academy. So it's really good. It's not just the boring,
Okay.
it's very cool. So that's create income you'll never outlive, and that's the course. Reach
Okay.
out to me for financial fitness strategy.
All right. So, Chris, thank you so much for dropping your gems on our clients, knowledge on our clients and the course. And so we'll have those links in the show notes.
Right.
And hey, go out there and make it a prosperous day. Check out the what is it? Money 911. Is it Money 911?
That's it. Right. Yeah.
Right, right.
Right.
And so check her out, follow that, and then if this intrigues you, reach out, get yourself a living trust.
There you go.
All right. Everybody should have a living trust. That's what someone will end with that, and talk about how that would fit into your life. You've got to transfer your wealth effectively and keep most of the money in the family. What does a Vanderbilt say? They didn't listen to it, but keep the money together, right?
Right.
So you got to keep the money together. So,
Yeah.
Chris, thank you so much for being a guest on the Practical Wealth Show.
My joy.
Again, my pleasure. And y'all go out there, make it a prosperous day, and we will talk to you soon.